On Radio Now 95.3 FM.
My name is Djaji Prime and I'm joined by Daniel Akins. Of course, this evening we have a true legend. I don't even know what adjectives can properly quantify and properly encapsulate the magnitude of the guests we have today. But let's just say we have the biggest bird in the building. Mm-hmm. We have a legendary artist, songwriter, all of them encapsulated in 2 words: Seun Kuti. Good evening.
How are you doing? Thanks for having me on your show.
It's great to have you on the show. It's literally a honor to have someone like you be with us in the studio today.
You people are just gassing me up.
Come on.
I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Well, I think that there are certain people who deserve that kind of gassing, if you want to call it gassing, because they have put their credibility, their career, their artistry on the line, and you have done that time and time again. So, obviously,
maybe it's because I don't want you people to think too highly of me because I'm able to do that. Maybe it's because it's not just because I love the people, but because even though I do it, it doesn't cost me much. So maybe you shouldn't.
Do you ever feel pressure from that?
Maybe if my market was controlled by them, I'll also be very quiet. Maybe, but we don't know.
Do you feel any pressure sometimes from representing the people?
No, I mean there's always pressure. Even if you don't represent the people, there's pressure. Life is pressure, innit? I mean, whatever it is you do, there's pressure. You just have to choose what you want to be pressurized for or by. Yeah.
And sort of like as a person, would you say that what you do it because you want to do it, or because of the legacy of the name that you carry?
No, it's because I want to do it. I'm not my father's children are involved in struggle now. Not by force.
But you've been doing it since you were 9 years old, right?
I've been playing music since I was 9.
You joined the band at 9?
At 8 really, but 8 and 8 months, because I remember my first show was in August, something like that. It was in August night at the Shrine. So that was a bit. I was 8 and 8 months, so I can say 9.
Wow.
But that's not struggle. That's performing in the Egypt 80. But at the same time, you can maybe say struggle because the Egypt 80 represents, that revolutionary art. It's the band that makes revolutionary music. So, being a part of that band is also being a revolutionary in some way. But I wouldn't say that I was, consciously being a revolutionary at 9.
How did a 9-year-old wrap his head around being a revolutionary?
Yeah, as I said, I wasn't thinking in those lines at all. At 9, I wasn't thinking.
So it was fun.
It was fun, yes.
Or more or less impulse from the fact that you literally just grew up around hearing those kind of things, and that was your normal.
That's actually very accurate, because many people think my dad or my mom said, "Oh, she won't play music. You have to be a musician." It didn't happen that way. My dad, I think Felas did not have to say it. I think Felas' way was to always put you around music, and then if you like it, you just click in,
Was it his music, or what was the selection?
Oh, Kalakuta was only Felas music. I mean, I've never seen a more. Growing up now, I sometimes I wonder how I'm able to have such a wide repertoire of musical taste. Of music that was even around at that time. Because you have to remember, Kalakuta was a republic, and literally, other forms of music were banned. Literally banned, so you couldn't play hip hop, you couldn't play pop music, at least for last hearing.
Okay.
When Walkman came out, we were kind of liberated because everybody can put on their Walkman and just listen to whatever you want to listen to your Walkman, but you couldn't play loud hip hop, loud pop. And now as I grow up, even though at that time the toxicity in many of these black genres of music, wasn't that glaring. But growing up now, I can understand why maybe Fela did not want to encourage that kind of the development of that kind of spirit in Kalakuta Republic. So,
when you say toxicity, what specifically are you speaking to?
The anti-blackness, the violence, the misogyny, the anti-African woman, then there's the anti-black woman rhetoric that is pervasive all through our so-called popular music.
Some hip hop fans would argue that it's really a reflection of the market because they create all sorts of anthems that are pro-women and all of those things.
It is not the reflection of the market. It is a deliberate decision or choice. No matter who the artist is in the mainstream of hip-hop music, you can never hear him talking about killing a white guy. It's a possibility.
I mean, there's the popular, F the police.
But there was something like everybody talk about NWA's fuck the police. You can bleep it. But the issue with fuck the police is that NWA is not saying fuck the police because black people want to be free. They say fuck the police because we want to rob and kill other black people and you are getting in our way.
I don't know if we have enough time because this.
If you listen to the lyrics, I mean, there are popular anti-police. I mean, KRS-One, that the sound of the police,
Right.
that the sound of that beast.
Because
there are quite a lot of popular anthems, but positive anti-system, we're living in a police state by Dead Prez in the album Let's Get Free. Now you're talking about, real anti-police songs.
So what do you think of
when you talk about fuck the police, come on. Listen to the lyrics of the song. You understand what I'm saying?
What do you think of an album like To Pimp a Butterfly then?
The Kendrick Lamar's album is alright. I mean, it's a good album. I have it in my car. It's a good hip-hop album. I mean, I don't understand. Also, like, people always point out, these little exceptions to the rule. Kendrick Lamar is one guy. It's not as if he's really trying to change the world with his music. He just makes music that doesn't offend.
Okay. We don't have enough time for
That
this hip hop conversation.
That conversation, yeah.
But we'll get hopefully we can have another conversation.
Anytime. I know for a fact that the same people that own the record labels that push this music also own the private prisons in America, and they own the entertainment companies, the magazines, and the TV shows, and every artist they sign, even before he sings one line of a song publicly, he's already a star. They put him on all the shows, put him front page everywhere. But they make sure that the music that they release and churn out is music that fits their main business, which is for private prisons, which they are bringing here to Nigeria. I mean, the international record labels have come to Nigeria, and closely behind them, if you check our government policy, is private prisons. So you all keep leaving it good. They are bringing your homes.
You see why I said we cannot have Seun Kuti in the building and not have this kind of black emancipation conversation. Right. And speaking of black emancipation, your most recent album, Black Revolutionary, Black Times, sorry. But
the song
Last Revolutionary, and on that song you go through a roll call of revolutionaries, Patrice Lumumba, just an extensive roll call. Right. One thing that strikes me is that roll call is almost like up until legends from the 60s to the 80s. 90s onwards, we don't have any revolutionaries.
We have in the making, but many times revolutionaries are truly understood at the end of their life. So not many of us are doing the work in this generation, and it's not our fault though. Just because we've bought the rhetoric, the narrative of hip hop music, of mainstream black music. We all think we are self-made. It's one of the anti-black individualist messages that must be sold to us through our art, so that we do not connect with the larger familia. Because if you are young and you think you are self-made, it is impossible for you to be a part of when you think nothing has been a part of you. But the truth is, even for us to sit down in this radio station and blow this our big grammar on microphone and transmit it to the world, somebody had to die. If you're African, you are never invited to the table for anything in this system. We are all children of sacrifice. So it's impossible for a black man to be self-made, because that's whatever it is that you practice that is making you make it. Somebody
paid for it.
Blood price for you to be able to practice that. And it is actually cowardly to think that the buck stops with you and you are now self-made, so you don't have to do any work for the future generations to have even better opportunities than you did. One of the greatest gifts that we have as African people today in this modern dispensation is that the Africans of the 60s, the Africans from the 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s gave everything that they could so that we could be better than them, so that we could be more than them. And then for some reason we bought into the narrative of their enemies to think that, to say that, okay, yes, this is all we should be, whereas there's more to.
So you speak of, sorry Danny, you speak of Africans doing a lot for us. One of the questions I had written down was, how does the older generation shepherd the new generation? We're young people here, and something that I hear a lot is Nigeria will be better in future, and I know that your generation heard that. And even when we talk about Nigeria, we talk about it retroactively. There was a time we used to go to London without the passport, and there was a time there were railways all over the country. So it's interesting that you say that people have paved the way. Yes, they have, but don't you think it kind of negates the realities that people see? For me to feel self-made, I have to go home, fuel my generator with the money I earn. I have to dig a borehole with the money I earn. Don't you think that all of those sentiments are being reflected, and that is why the newer generation feels that way?
No, that's the sentiment of the Nigerian professional, so that he can disengage, as I said before, from the struggle of his larger familia. Whatever we say, all of us that can do these things that you just pointed out, we're in a minority, very tiny minority in this country. But that is what we do. So when there's no light, instead of us to agitate with our brothers and sisters so that the country can have light, we buy gen for ourselves.
But how do you as an individual fix the national grid?
By not the national grid, you fix the nation. If the nation is working, the nation's grid will be working. If the nation is working, the nation's hospital will be working, because all these things are part of the nation, you know. The reason why they don't work is because the nation is very broken.
So you said something about how, you know, Africans, you started from the 10s, you said the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, that they did a lot for us to be better. So are you saying
to be better than them?
To be better than them. But are you saying that you know, we shouldn't blame them for the mistakes that they made, considering the fact that they did, you know, they were involved in the slave trade, whether we like it or not. It was their actions.
Yeah, I'm not saying Africans are perfect. I'm not saying we have a perfect history. When you say Africans were involved in the slave trade, in what capacity? As per
the leaders, I'm not now saying now that every individual had a part to play, but whether we like it or not, when the Europeans did come to Africa, their contact, their communication was with the leaders, and the leaders made that decision to say.
Yes, this is the popular lie that is sold to us, so that only a tiny group of Africans worked exclusively with the Europeans, and those were the African merchants. Those Africans that respected the value of things more than the value of people, and they were quite few in number. But the problem is that they had the large strength of Europeans validating and empowering them against their own people. So upon the first contact of many of the kings and communities in Africa with Europeans, many of the kings actually banned contact and trade with Europeans, knowing fully well that it was a disadvantageous trade and it was hurtful to us as a people, because Europeans were largely only interested in the trade of people, you know. So when the kings would give out these laws, these people would go behind the king's back to continue trading and thereby becoming strong and wealthy, and thereby they were using them to usurp the original kings. So this is history lesson, you know. But people like Djaji, for example, you know, when you see a man like Djaji, you hear a story. You see that Djaji was somebody that Europeans empowered against his original traditional king that he should be under his control because he refused to hear word. They say Djaji is a great man until they get tired of him and they replace him. So many of the kings that resisted were replaced with many of these Africans that respected things over people. So for 400 years, it is this same group of Africans that have been ruling us to the detriment of the many of us. In the past, it was iron bars and textile and jean and clothes. Today, they do it for Rolls Royce and Gucci shoe and, you know, trying to make Africans believe that luxury and consuming is the only essential way of being. These people were in the minority in Africa. The Africans I'm telling you about, even in the past, were those Africans that created a society where nobody stole. See, Europeans don't understand what a trust market is. But you see, in Africa, we had markets where people didn't steal, even though nobody watched the market. And those kind of societies were created by certain kind of people with a certain kind of understanding. You know, these were the people that were killed. When you hear that Oba Ovorame was exiled out of his country to Calabar and killed, you think he was killed because he was submitting slaves to the West? No, he was killed because he was resisting such slave trade. They won't teach you that in the 400 years that slavery occurred, there were over 484 anti-slave trade rebellions led by your ancestors fighting to stop this trade in our continent. You understand? So
you sort of make it seem like we need to take.
I don't make anything seem.
You're basically stating that we need to take responsibility, right? That past Africans, past leaders, or shall I say, past people have kind of, you know, done things to make life better for us, and we are the one not taking advantage of that. But even amongst Africans now that, you know, a lot of, you know, African countries have independence, even within ourselves, we still have conflicts where we are killing each other off, and there's literally no peace.
Yeah, and then nobody doesn't kill themselves. People kill themselves every time, every day. There's always internal. People should not expect Africans to be the perfect human beings before we can be human beings. We are human beings because we do those things that are imperfect. That's why we are human beings. I mean, people go into American schools, they are not even fighting war and shoot up little kids every day. People know so that for that reason, they shouldn't have development and progress or anything. The issue we have is in Africa is that we are not doing the work against the evil. Every people have good and bad. But in Africa, it seems that the good people in Africa believe the narrative of the bad people and rather serve them to, you understand, all the men that fought for independence in Africa, for example. They were those people that were against the colonial regime, right? But you realize that people ruling Africa today were those people that work directly with the colonial regimes in the name of military. When you hear African military, what do you think that means? African military simply means this group of men that were willing to kill other Africans to sustain European interest. Finish.
The origin of African military.
Exactly.
Even the police in America. Same.
Even the police here, the so-called Glover boys, you know, what was their job? Their job was to kill other black people to protect European interests. And then they are the ones ruling us today. In between these two stories, some good Africans stood up to fight hard to remove their masters. But we thought they were our brothers and we left them, forgetting what they've been doing for 400 years. And now that we are wise to know that these people are these people, we are seeing what they are doing. Many of us just want to stick our head in the sand instead of picking up the mantle to do what our ancestors have done, but the job is not finished. It's our duty to finish the job, complete, to liberate our people and our lands. You know, but then people come up with I think what you said is our people that sold us into slavery. Our people go to the beach and put megaphone and start shouting, "We have people for sale. Who is out there? Please come here. We have people for sale." No, I mean, there are letters upon letters, but you know, this is not what they teach us in school.
Yeah.
You know, there are letters upon letters written by our kings, by our ancestors, demanding. They write to the queen that you said we are friends. that you are sending your people here to come and help us build something, but they are here stealing our people. Well, such kings are killed, such kings are exiled, such great men that stood protected their communities, lost to history. Go to read Leopold's Ghost and see what happened
King Leopold in
Congo.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is the true history is different from the perceived history. The perceived history wants to simplify everything. Oh, black people sold all black people into slavery. What does that mean? Okay, what does that mean, black people? Which black people? How do you judge society? So every society must judge itself from the best of its children. So if I would speak of the British people today, British, and you talk about the Second World War, it's not all the British people that fought it now. There's a certain group of them, but that is what represents the majority. The criminals of England that are in the jail, they don't represent England. You don't say because some British people are in jail, all British people are criminals. Any healthy society represents itself by the best of that society. That brings me to the slave trade. What Africans were involved in the slave trade? People always say, oh, some chiefs. Who is a chief? Is it because they call you a chief? Yesterday you were a slave. They kill your master. They kill the king of the town, the person you are slaving for. Say, okay, you're not the new chief. Does that make you a chief? Maybe it does. But for me, that makes you somebody they put in charge of something to make something happen. And they did that a lot in Africa to keep the slaves coming. They kept wars going to keep the slaves coming. And you should also remember that the Arabs also have the history, even longer than the Europeans,
Trans-Sahara,
of bringing this attitude of stealing human beings from Africa. So this was a widespread thing. Not Africans sold other Africans into slavery. Nah, that's not accurate. It's too simple.
It's interesting though. It seems like black culture, African culture, it goes under a lot of scrutiny, which is why I feel like we should have that extended conversation on hip hop. But shifting back to imperialism, you have a single IMF, right?
Yeah.
IMF. It's quite like maybe a decade old now.
Is it a decade old yet?
I think it was
I don't know.
maybe 8 years.
I think it is though.
So in that record,
wow, time flies.
In that record, you were talking about International Monetary Fund. So I want to ask you what you think of those institutions today, and whether a black person being at the helm has any significance for Africans. Is there a way we can change the system from within?
No, it's just like saying a cockroach wants to change a chicken from inside the stomach. A cockroach has already been eaten by the chicken. It's now inside the chicken's stomach, sitting there in the digestive juices of the chicken's stomach and thinking, I'm going to change the chicken from the inside. It's impossible. I mean, never in the history of anything has anybody changed anything from the inside before. It's never been done. That's not how change happens. Change happens from without. Change has never happened from within. No president or tyrant has ever woken up one day that, oh, one of my ministers advised me and has been fighting, and I've decided to heed his advice to change the. No. I think in the history of the world, change has always come from those that are oppressed. Change has always come from those that have been dehumanized. I think that's how they've always. Change has always happened in the world. That one person goes to the person is just putting a black face on white supremacy or imperialism. I mean, just like Obama.
Okay. Shifting to Nigerian music now, it's getting a lot of recognition, of course. You're Grammy nominated. What do you think of the current crop of Nigerian artists? And are you proud of how far Nigerian music has come, or do you think there's more room for improvement?
Things that make me proud affect me personally. So
does it bring you joy then?
Definitely. I mean, lots of joy.
Are there particular people or persons you would point to and say, okay, yes, this person is doing it right now?
I think everybody is doing it right for themselves, at least as long as they are able to make a living from their art. in terms of doing it right, I think that doesn't have to do with me. I'm not the one that decides what is right or what is wrong. And music is not that kind of thing that you can sit down on your own high horse and say this person's music is right and this person's music is wrong. I don't think anybody has the right to do that, really. But definitely I have songs I enjoy and songs I don't, which I think everybody has the right to do that as well. But regardless of that, I think many artists are doing good things, and the industry can only get better. Maybe Nigerian people need more artists that remember where they are from, remember where they are coming from, remember their background, and see how they're going to elevate people out of that. Maybe Nigerian people need some artists speaking for them. Other than that, musically speaking, I don't have any criticisms per se. The only thing I don't like that happens in the Nigerian music industry is that every artist that is blowing up starts saying that they are the new fella. I think that's disrespectful and dehumanizing. And it's the dehumanizing part that concerns me. Because, when people say that, they forget that fella is actually a human being that lived a physical life. And when you say you're the new fella, you are basically saying that you're my new father. And I feel like I want to come and slap you for not paying some bills.
Don't you think they're not? I understand that, and not to disrespect you in that aspect, but don't you see it as also them giving homage, kind of like
you can give homage without becoming the new fella?
Immortal kind.
Why
of
are you
thing.
the new fella? Is that the way you can give homage? How many new Bob Marleys have you heard coming out of Jamaica? Because Jamaicans, at least as rough and crazy as we say they are, they know what respect means. You can pay homage in many different ways, but you can't call dehumanizing somebody paying homage.
So you made a comment like a couple of years back that it's black people are the only race that are represented by music, right?
By musicians.
By musicians, rather. Why do you think artists shouldn't represent black people?
Because they're just not intelligent enough to.
Well, wouldn't you, in the past year, let's say with Taking the Knee, for example, NBA, all of that.
This is the reason why athletes and musicians shouldn't represent black people. Taking the knee, when your boss says it's okay to take the knee, he's taking the knee for your boss, not for black people.
But there are several athletes who have taken the knee at the expense.
The time when those did it for the people, and it's one, Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
Where is he in this whole noise today? Nowhere to be found. Have they even given him the job back in the NFL?
I think they offered him, he turned it down.
No, because it was a stupid deal. They were offering him peanuts. These are top class athletes. They were basically giving him like a
Baku manage.
So they're not intelligent enough to lead the conversation.
Yes, because to talk about black issues take a lot of scholarly work, take a lot of reading, take a lot of understanding issues. Because when you don't understand issues and you just come and give all these your basic responses, pseudo-intelligent responses, it becomes more problematic. The whole NSAS movement was weakened because unintelligent artists that have not versed themselves properly in African issues jumped to the front of the line and led the people astray.
They're the only ones that were... They're the only ones that rose to the occasion. We can't wait for people to come, and we can't drag somebody.
Rising to the occasion and then understanding your position within the occasion are two different things. Artists in Nigeria can rise to the occasion and then employ scholars to analyze the situation for the people, or at least advise them before they speak. Not just jump out and say whatever you think you want to say because you've seen it somewhere and it sounds good to you. Right. That's not how liberation works.
I'm still talking about black people.
If you look at any other people in the world, when they have issues, it is their professors that come out to speak.
You made that point.
Because that is what it is. That is what politics is. That's what social engineering is about. Black people all over the world, we can't be having athletes. And look at African footballers in Premier League taking a knee for Black Lives Matter. While they are in their country, they are quiet. How many Nigerian footballers that are in Premier League are talking about what's going on in Nigeria? are coming to take a knee. When they arrive in airport, first take a knee before they come out of international airport. When want to play Benin Republic, how many Nigerian players took a knee before the start of the Nations Cup qualifier?
That's an interesting perspective.
That's a thinker right there.
But then, still talking about representation and the black people, right? And today is World Jazz Day. And of course, we know that
Today is World Jazz Day.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
And we know that the history of jazz in itself, it's tied directly to slave and that that sound of freedom, right? And for a long time, jazz in itself represented black freedom, right? Wouldn't you say that's a true representation of the black people and the message they were trying to pass at the time?
Let me put it this way. I think with slave trade came a dispersing of African people all over the world, and African music went with us everywhere. So it's not just jazz came from the blues. You understand? Jazz is the blues, and the jazz became bebop, and bebop became rock and roll, so on and so forth. But you have to understand that it is still just African music. Is the music African people make when they are oppressed, when they are dehumanized. We made the blues, so that's why we had that, the blues sound.
Spirituals,
the African spirituals.
They say it is. That, yeah, that's because it all came from, because that was the only rights we had to only make music when we were doing Christianity under slavery there. But you go to Jamaica and then we have the same thing, but then the music we make when we're isolated, away from everybody. So I think African music is the same everywhere, and hip hop, or rather this modern whatever it has more fun, is the music we make when we are loose and we think we are free. There's a big difference between being loose and being free, and black people need to really get the definitions correct, and then so we can start acting free instead of acting loose. So I think all black music is connected by our situation, but it is all the original sound. I mean, you hear the blues, the way they play, and you go to Mali to hear Ali Fakuture, and there's no difference in the sound. There's no difference there because it's the same music. We took it with us.
All right, so and just to sort of like wrap things up, right? While we were talking, you mentioned the game between Nigeria and Benin Republic. So I would guess that you are football savvy, right?
I mean that's the only sport I really know how to play.
Interesting. So what team do you support?
I support the Arsenal.
Really?
Yes.
You're in the Europa room.
We are literally all
we're all goddess here.
No, but the issue with that is I went to school in Liverpool, but my dad went to school in London, and I'd always so Felas did not support Arsenal like a normal Arsenal guy, but we just watched the game, we checked the scores. Okay. We want to know what the scores was that weekend.
And sort of like coming out to like the present state of the Champions League, right? Who do you think could potentially win the Champions League?
I don't care, man.
Wow.
Really, I really don't care. I mean, this is the phase now that I'm also like winding down in commercial football and all that, watching games every week in, week out. And people think it's because I'm an Arsenal fan. No, just because I need to reduce football so that I can do other things with the time.
It seems, just to kind of wrap, it seems though that you're maintaining a playful side yourself. I see your nails are kind of very colorful today. Right. You were explaining the meaning of the tattoos earlier. So what do these symbolize in your self-expression?
No. Actually, I play my nails because people say like there's the false notion of masculinity floating around because of the Bobriskis and the James Brown. Actually, James Brown came to my restaurant last Thursday.
Oh, wow.
Interesting guy.
Interesting.
Or rather, interesting human. I don't know what the pronoun he uses. I use he again.
They use it.
It was
but I love the fact that there's a respect for the fact that someone has the
The
choice
choice,
to make.
But for me, what is funny about that is both them and the people opposing them, they are all wrapped in white standard of masculinity. You see, masculinity is not white, right? Many cultures express masculinity in so many different ways, but in the world today now, you decide who a man is by kind of clothes you wear, how he talk, the size of his chest, how British he is and all that. But that is not what it means to be a man. Masculinity and being a man is based on one thing and one thing only: your word. Finish. And it's not about being a man, it's about being a human. So being a man, being a woman, oh yeah, a woman, these are European concepts that allow humanity to be divided. It all starts from the division of self. It is actually epistemology, but Europeans want you to believe that it is fact, that mind must control body. So when you start from there, you first start with dividing yourself, but not divide to understand, divide to control. So you divide yourself so that you can put your mind in control of your body. Then you begin to assign attributes and characters to those things. Oh, the masculine man is mind, woman is emotion, and since mind is above body, men must control women. That's where patriarchy comes from. Then you break it down further, But we as African men, I want us to remember that G-string was invented by African men.
Wow.
Yes,
That's an interesting
fact.
The Bushman of South Africa,
Yeah.
traditional wear,
And we were mocked for it.
Is the G-string. So are you going to say that because the greatest warrior in Bushman community wearing G-string, you are more masculine than him? Go and meet him, make him knock you for ground 2 times.
And they are even mocked for that.
Exactly.
It's a caricature.
African men wore braids, earrings, painted their face. African kings were the first to use makeup and things like that. So our notion of what it means to be masculine, we have come to completely accept the European Judeo-Christian notions of masculinity. And these notions of masculinity excludes you from your totality, because you are not allowed to be sensitive in this idea of masculinity. Being sensitive is a feminine trait which men should not. But any human being, forget man or woman, any human being that is not sensitive is hurting himself. If you're not letting your emotions out, if you cannot care for someone. In fact, I've gone to the extent that masculinity means the inability to love your wife. That you're not in love with your wife.
Right.
You have to constantly let your people know that you can't be in love. Your heart is torn. This
hard
kind
guy.
all these kind of toxic things that is unnatural, but for some reason everybody's trying to force themselves to be, and it's creating so many mentally deranged people in society. Many people get broken before they are 25, just because they split themselves into so many different parts. They themselves have lost count of how many different parts and which part they need before the person has fallen into the abyss of mental illness. And that's why there's so many mental illness in town today. Everybody is crazy, and but because everybody is crazy, toxicity looks normal. You understand? Toxicity looks normal. Everybody is completely medicated all the time, Whereas I was thinking when I was less social, because there was a time I just withdrew to realign my life when I started understanding the world, before I started mixing with people again. And before that time, I was really, even when I was mixing with people, I wasn't close because I was scared of people. But now that I'm a bit higher in my vibrations, if I can say so, I get closer to people without fear. Then I realized that I had so many false notions, because I thought that the most successful people in this country were the least medicated. Like, successful people in Nigeria, to be successful, you have to function. You have to be doing things. You couldn't be high all the time or on medicated drugs all the time. But then I met people that were in this position, and I realized they were even more high than me. I mean, like, all the time high, all the time drunk, all the time no sleep. These are symptoms of broken people, of toxicity. But it's normalized here. It's absolutely normalized. I'm flabbergasted. I mean, the damage that's done to our psyche here by the elites due to their misrepresentation of reality to the youth and their reinforcement of that misrepresentation, with consumerism and luxury, is really damaging to people's psyche here and their self-esteem.
Well, this has definitely been a powerful interview. But like I said at the very beginning, we're truly honored to have you here, and we hope to have more conversations like this in the future.
Lengthy conversations.
But
no problem. I answered it like so that you won't call me back for a long time. I don't have to come back. Hey.
Thank you so much, Seun.